In the early morning hours of December 16, 1944, more than 400,000 German troops silently advanced through the Arden Forest, completely undetected by American forces. By daybreak, numerous American units found themselves encircled and destroyed. Despite being outnumbered, lacking adequate supplies, and facing inevitable defeat, the Germans executed this operation with remarkable effectiveness. American military leaders made a disturbing discovery. German soldiers demonstrated superior combat effectiveness compared to their American counterparts on an individual basis. This wasn't about fanaticism or brutality, but rather professional capability. Even during the final battle for Berlin, when German forces were completely surrounded and defeat was certain, they managed to kill over 81,000 Soviet troops and destroy nearly 2,000 tanks within 2 weeks. Veterans who served in multiple conflicts consistently reported that Germans were their most formidable opponents. This reality helps explain the high American casualty rates in Europe and why seemingly straightforward battles became extremely costly. Following the war, the U.S. military adopted elements of German combat doctrine. The key to German military effectiveness lay in how soldiers were developed. German military training actually began around age 10 through youth organizations that functioned as preparation for military service. By the late 1930s, millions of young German boys had received marksmanship training and participated in military-style field exercises under direct military supervision. In contrast, typical American soldiers in 1944 were teenagers who received only 3 to 4 months of combined basic and specialized training before deployment. Beyond the duration, the fundamental philosophy differed significantly. American training emphasized following orders and performing assigned roles within a structured hierarchy. German training focused on preparing soldiers to make independent decisions when leadership was absent. This difference became critically apparent in combat situations. When an American squad encountered enemy fire, the standard procedure involved requesting instructions through the chain of command. The squad leader would contact his lieutenant, who might then consult with the captain, who could decide to call for artillery support. This process consumed considerable time, while soldiers remained exposed to danger. German squads facing identical situations operated differently. Their squad leaders immediately assessed the tactical situation, identified vulnerabilities, and directed their soldiers to exploit them using non-verbal communication. Soldiers moved without hesitation because they had trained extensively for such scenarios. While one element provided suppressing fire, another would maneuver to attack from an unexpected angle. The operational difference was stark. What took American units 15 minutes to resolve through proper channels, German units accomplished in 3 minutes through decentralized decision-making. This wasn't an isolated occurrence, but a systematic advantage that manifested in every engagement. While American soldiers awaited authorization, German soldiers were already executing flanking movements and counterattacks. These accumulated delays translated directly into casualties, explaining why German forces remained dangerous opponents even when facing overwhelming odds and certain defeat. American military leaders began noticing a troubling pattern in their combat reports. Smaller German units were successfully holding positions against larger American forces and responding more rapidly to changing battlefield conditions. Initially, the reason wasn't clear, but they eventually realized this stemmed from a fundamental military philosophy that had been developed and refined across generations. The Germans employed a concept called mission tactics, which represented a fundamentally different approach to command. American leadership provided detailed instructions on how to execute operations, while German commanders communicated objectives and allowed subordinates to determine the methods. Though this distinction appears subtle, its impact on combat effectiveness was profound. However, this system required soldiers who were already highly capable upon reaching the front lines. By 1944, many German troops defending France were seasoned veterans from the Eastern Front, which had claimed more lives than all other theaters combined. These men had survived battles like Stalingrad and Kursk, where Soviet forces attacked in overwhelming numerical waves. They had endured winter conditions so severe that equipment failure from extreme cold was as deadly as enemy fire. Their experience fighting under catastrophic circumstances made them exceptionally capable when situations deteriorated. In comparison, the typical American soldier arriving at Normandy had never experienced combat or witnessed death. His first exposure to battle was the invasion itself. Intelligence analysts discovered something surprising. German combat effectiveness actually increased as their strategic situation worsened. Even in their final battles, when surrounded with no hope of victory, they remained extraordinarily lethal. The Battle for Berlin in April 1945 exemplifies this. The Red Army encircled the city with 2.5 million soldiers and thousands of tanks and artillery pieces. The German defenders numbered perhaps 100,000, mostly consisting of elderly men and teenagers, with no air support or possibility of reinforcement. Despite the certain outcome, Hitler's imminent death and Germany's surrender, these doomed defenders killed over 81,000 Soviet soldiers and destroyed nearly 2,000 tanks during 2 weeks of fighting. This demonstrates how the German army continued winning individual engagements even while losing the war. However, the Battle of Ternopil illustrates how this professional competence was squandered by poor strategic leadership. Hitler designated this Ukrainian city as a fortress that must be held regardless of circumstances. When the initial commander reported the position was untenable, Hitler replaced him. The 4,600 German soldiers held against overwhelming odds for a month, suffering a 99% casualty rate with only 55 escaping. Their professional skill became meaningless under strategic folly. Beyond training and experience, equipment also contributed significantly to German effectiveness, though misconceptions exist about their weapons. The MG-42 machine gun fired 1,200 rounds per minute, double the rate of the American bar. More importantly, German squad organizations centered on the machine gun with riflemen supporting it, whereas American squads centered on riflemen with the bar providing support. This meant a single German sergeant with an MG-42 could generate firepower equivalent to an entire American rifle squad, explaining how smaller German units could defend positions against larger forces. Regarding tanks, there's a persistent myth that 5 Sherman tanks were needed to destroy one Tiger. This claim, originating from a single source considered unreliable by historians, doesn't match actual data. A 1946 U.S. Army study of tank engagements showed Shermans achieved a 3.6 to 1 kill ratio against Panthers, favoring the Sherman. British reports indicated Allies inflicted 1.3 casualties for each Sherman lost overall. While Shermans were disadvantaged in frontal engagements at long range, American doctrine avoided such situations. Instead, they employed flanking maneuvers, air support, and specialized tank destroyers. Tigers were actually quite rare. Most German tanks were Panzer IVs, which Shermans fought effectively against. 1833. The claim that American tanks were ineffective is inaccurate. The Shermans' true strengths were dependability and production volume. For every Tiger tank Germany manufactured, America produced 10 Shermans. Despite advantages in logistics, manufacturing capacity, and numerical superiority, American forces still suffered severe casualties due to an unexpected vulnerability created by their abundance. A puzzling contradiction emerged. America possessed the finest military supply system in history. When American units required artillery, hundreds of guns could provide support. Air assistance arrived in large formations. Replacement vehicles appeared within days. Germany lacked these capabilities, struggling with insufficient supplies, fuel, and ammunition. However, this logistical superiority paradoxically slowed American operations. German forces traveled with minimal equipment and moved rapidly, while American units waited for supplies, established supply chains, and advanced methodically. German forces could attack in the morning, retreat when countered, and launch new attacks by afternoon. While Americans consolidated territory and brought forward supplies, Germans withdrew, reorganized, and counterattacked. Over extended periods, American firepower proved decisive, but in isolated engagements, German speed resulted in American deaths. During the Bulge Offensive, Germany committed approximately 500,000 troops and lost over 100,000, losses they couldn't replace. America had replacements already en route across the Atlantic. Fighting Germans imposed an unexpected psychological toll unrelated to combat itself. In the coldest January on record in Western Europe, American soldiers in the Ardennes faced weather as deadly as enemy fire. Within 2 months, 23,000 American soldiers suffered trench foot casualties. Extended exposure to wet, freezing conditions caused flesh to rot and turn black, often requiring amputation, all while soldiers attempted to continue fighting. Germans with years of Eastern Front winter experience knew prevention methods. Americans learned through fatal trial and error. A deeper psychological burden affected American soldiers, the enemy's similarity to themselves. Many Americans had German surnames and ancestry. Captured German soldiers often resembled family members, making combat emotionally difficult. Until an incident near Malmedy, Belgium, where SS troops executed 84 captured American soldiers with machine guns. This massacre distinguished the SS ideological troops from the Wehrmacht professional soldiers who observed combat rules. This distinction became critically important to every American soldier. If German soldiers demonstrated superior individual effectiveness, their defeat resulted from strategic failures. Hitler's irrational decisions, like designating indefensible fortress cities, wasted tactical excellence. Germany's industrial capacity couldn't compete with American production, which launched 1 cargo ship daily and produced 1 bomber hourly from a single factory. America could replace all losses. Germany couldn't. Every German casualty was permanent. German soldiers were ultimately betrayed by their own leadership. American soldiers who engaged Germans developed respect for them as professional soldiers rather than as Nazis. Following the war, American officers analyzed German tactics and began incorporating mission-oriented command concepts. The contemporary U.S. military employs principles derived from German doctrine, including decentralized command structures, objective-based orders, and empowered non-commissioned officers. Though Germany lost the war, their military philosophy influenced armed forces for subsequent generations. German soldiers achieved greater individual effectiveness through superior training, doctrine, and combat experience. However, America possessed larger forces, better supply systems, and coherent strategy. Quality ultimately succumbed to quantity, though that quality was genuine and remained memorable to the American soldiers who faced it.